Now let's talk about moving these walls into position. We can move these walls into precise position by using either the temporary dimensions, like we did when we were using the CAD lines. If I select this wall, I want to move this wall. Think of this as a closed polyline. So I'll select the edge or the wall that I want to move, click on the dimension that I want to move it to, and then type in the dimension that you want. This is going to be 29 feet 6 inches. When you're typing in a value in a dialog asking for a distance, if you type the double quote, Chief will use inches. If you don't type any quote at all, Chief will assume you mean inches. If you want to type feet, make sure to type in that single quote. Now I'm going to hit enter. Another way to use your temporary dimensions is to use the dimension that indicates the length of the wall you've selected. I want this length to be 3'4", so I'm going to click on the dimension and then determine which way I want this wall to move. If I want to lock this corner here, then I want to move this one. So I'll select this button, which is pointing at the end I want to move. You can resize it by the center or move the top end. Type in 3'4" and hit enter. Another way to move your walls into position is to use your dimension tools. Here in your dimension tools you have manual dimensions and you have automatic dimensions. The first tool here is my automatic exterior dimension tool. When you click on this tool, Chief will automatically place dimensions all the way around the outside of the building and locate the objects according to your dimension defaults. Here I want to move this wall so that this length is 17 feet 9 inches. Then the length of this wall, I'll select this one to move, select this dimension to move it to 11'9". Then we'll select this wall, and I know that this distance wants to be 20'6". This wall, relative to this wall, wants to be 25 feet. And notice that I'm selecting this wall to move because this wall, relative to this wall, is exactly in the right position. I don't want it to move. So I'll select the wall that I want to move, type the dimension that I want to move it to, and hit enter. This dimension wants to be 7'6", and this dimension wants to be 33 feet. Now that I've got all my walls into position, I can remove my dimensions. I could select one dimension, hold down my Shift key, and select other dimension lines. Another quick way to select like objects is to use the Active Tool Selection mode. So here, I'll click on my Dimension Tools parent tool, and my Manual Dimension tool is active. With the Dimension tool active, I can hold down my Shift key, click and drag a marquee around everything. With that tool active, it'll only select the dimensions. Then I can hit my Delete key to delete them all. Again, we'll use our Zoom tools to fill the window with the building. Now I'm ready to draw my interior walls. So we'll go to the Straight Wall Tools parent tool and select Interior Wall. I'll start the first one here at this corner. Click and drag straight down. As long as I'm snapping to the corner with the snap indicator, it should align the face of these two walls exactly. I'll start again here and draw another one this direction. I want another wall starting right at the center of this wall, so I'll move my cursor until I see that triangular snap indicator and click and drag a wall all the way across. Then I'll draw in a couple of other walls. Again, I'm not too worried about making these precise because I'll move my walls using dimensions. To move these walls into position, we'll use a couple of different dimensioning tools. In your automatic dimension tools, you do have the automatic interior dimensions. If I click on this, Chief will place dimensions inside of each room. As you can see here, each dimension in each room is duplicated. That's because this dimension is dimensioning this wall. This one is dimensioning this wall. At this point, those dimensions are identical. However, if I click Undo and then place a door in this wall, click again on my automatic dimensions and use my automatic interior dimensions, you can see that it's placed an additional dimension line that includes the door. I'll go ahead and click Undo to remove them, and then we'll use a different manual dimension tool to move our walls. Here I want to use my interior dimension tool. The interior dimension tool When you start on one wall and draw across a room, we'll place an interior dimension from the inside of the wall to the inside of the wall. If I continue dragging the line to the other wall, it'll place another dimension in the next room. Now I can move this wall using these dimensions. So I'll select the wall and then select the dimension and change the dimension number that I want to move the wall to. Now here I want 15 foot 8.5 inches. I could type 15 foot 8 space and then 1/2, or type 15 foot 8.5. I'll go ahead and click OK, and that'll move my wall into precise position. I'll move this wall down a little bit, and then I want to align this wall with this one. So I'll click and drag down, and as soon as I get down to where it's aligned, you see that red X snap indicator, indicating that those two edges are aligned. Then I'll use another interior dimension. Start from here and draw it all the way across all of these rooms. This wall will move to 11 foot 4 from the adjacent wall. Select this wall, select the dimension, I'll shorten this wall up a little bit, and here, just like with the CAD tools, if I select a wall, I have a diamond-shaped edit handle at the end. This is your same wall type edit handle. If I click and drag this in another direction, it'll draw another wall of the same wall type. I'll delete this dimension, and again use my interior dimension, and click and drag down this wall. And notice that it dimensioned the length of that wall. So I'll select that wall, click on the dimension, and type the dimension I want to use. I want to add one more interior wall to form a little closet. Then I'll use the zoom tool to fill the window with the building only. Now I want to make one slight change. I want to add one more interior wall right here, and again I'll go to my dimension tools, use my interior dimension tool, click and drag a dimension, and then we'll move a few things down. I want to move this wall and this wall at the same time. I don't want to change the length of this one, so I'll just select both of these walls, and with both of them selected I can use one dimension to move them both at the same time. This will be 5 foot 2.5, and you'll notice it didn't change the length of that wall. Then this wall will be 3 feet. This one will be 3 foot 7, and this one will be 11 foot 4 from the exterior wall. Now with all of our rooms divided by walls, we can select each individual room. If you click inside of a room, you'll notice that the entire room is highlighted in pink. Here I'll double-click inside of this room to open up the Room Specification dialog. With this dialog, you can make several changes. If I go to the Structure panel, you'll notice the default buttons that are checked here. That indicates that it's following the room defaults that we set up before we started designing the building, for ceiling heights, as well as the ceiling and floor structures and the ceiling and floor finishes. I'll go here to the General panel, and here I can assign the room type. And remember, I'm not just naming the room, I'm bringing with this room defaults. For instance, this will be the kitchen, and the floor finish will follow my kitchen room type floor finish. Once I've assigned a room type, I can then name the room something different. This room is using the room type for the name. If you want to change the name, uncheck this box and type in a different name. If you don't want the room label to show for this room, you can uncheck this box. I'll go ahead and click OK. And you can see now that I have my room label, and the room label includes the size of the room. The room label or name and the room size are actually on two different layers. If you don't want to see the room size, you can go to your Layer Display options. It's this white box with the red check mark in it. Here you can see all of the layers that Chief uses. Everything that Chief builds is on different layers. The walls are on wall layers. The text is on text layers. The cabinets are all on cabinet layers. You also have layers specific to the room. You can either scroll down using the scroll bar, or if you select one of the layers in the list and then simply type R on your keyboard, that'll take you right down to the R's in the list. Here you'll see the room labels layer. With the room labels, you can also display the interior area, interior dimensions, or the standard area of the room. Right now, the interior dimensions are displayed. You can see that they're displayed because there is a check mark under the DISP column for your layers. If I uncheck this box and click OK, you can see that the interior dimensions are no longer displayed. We'll go ahead and assign room types for each of these rooms. This will be the bedroom. This will be a hallway. This is a bath and a closet. For the closet, because it's a very small room, I don't want to show the room label, so I'll uncheck the box for room label. This will be the living room and the entry. And this will be the garage. Now if I go to the structure panel for the garage, you'll notice here that there is no floor finish. The floor finish layer is 0 inches thick because there is no floor finish. The floor structure, if I click on the edit button, is one layer of 4 inches of solid concrete. Once our room types are assigned, we can start adding doors and windows. I'll start here by going to the Door Tool Parent tool and select the hinge door. In your door tools you have the hinge door, the doorway or framed opening, the sliding door, the pocket door, the bifold door, and a garage door. We'll select the hinge door, and I'm going to click on the wall where I want to place the door. But before you click, you'll want to move your cursor along the wall to the exact position that you want to place it. You'll also notice that if I click and hold down my left mouse button and then move my cursor in a circle, I can determine as I place the door where I want the hinge side to be and where I want the swing side to be. You can also change the hinge side and swing side after you've placed the door. If you click on the door, in your edit toolbar at the bottom, you have your change swing side and change hinge side tools. Once you've placed it, you can also move it by using the Move Edit handle indicated by the 4-way arrow. You can also change the open angle by using the triangle. If I double-click on the door, it'll open the Interior Door Specification dialog. This door is following the defaults that you set up before you begin designing. You can also change the defaults as you're working. For instance, if I want my typical door to be 32 inches wide by 80 inches high, or if I want to use a different door style by going to the library browser and selecting a different door style, or if I want to change the size and the profile that the casing is using, I can make changes to this and then click OK. With this door still selected, I can change the defaults for how the doors that I place from now on will look by clicking on this button to Set as Default. You'll get an information box that tells you that the door defaults have now been updated to the changes I made to this door. I'll go ahead and place a couple more doors. One here from the garage, and then I'll use a pocket door for the bathroom, and we'll use a bifold door for the closet. I also want to place a large framed opening in this wall between the living room and the kitchen. But first, I'll go ahead and delete this wall. If you have two areas that you want different flooring in, instead of placing a solid wall, you can place a room divider. A room divider is a zero-width invisible wall that simply defines one area separately from the other area. I'll take a camera view of this so we can see what this looks like. The difference between the living room type and the kitchen room type is the flooring that we're using. So I've divided these two areas as separate room areas using that room divider. In this particular case, I actually want a full height wall with an opening in it. So we'll replace that wall and then go back to the door tools and place a doorway. I want this to be right in the middle of this wall, so I'll click right where I see that red triangular midpoint indicator. And then I want to make this opening bigger. So I'll double click on it, and here for the width I'll use 8 feet. Then we'll put another framed opening between the kitchen and the hallway. Now this one is not going to center on the wall because this wall is the full length. However, I want the opening centered on the hallway. So I'll select the opening. In my Edit toolbar, I'll use the Center Object tool. Once I have the Center Object tool activated, as I move around, the tool is looking for the object to center on. You'll notice that if I center it on the bath, the room turns pink. If I center it on a wall, the wall turns pink. So here I want to center it on the hallway. So I'll move my cursor into the hallway until I see that horizontal center line indicator, and then click. That will place that door perfectly centered on the hallway. Now I'm going to add an exterior door. So we'll go back to the door tool and then click right in the middle of this wall. And I want to make some changes to this door. I want to add a couple of side lights on each side of the door. So we'll go to our Window Tools parent tool, and I'll place one window right next to the door here, and I'll double click on the window to edit it. This 32-inch by 48-inch double hung window is the default. So I'm going to override the default by clicking on the drop down. I want this to be fixed glass. I'll change the width to 12 inches and the height to 79 inches. I also want to go to the sill panel and remove the window sill. Then I'll go to the lights panel and add divided lights. Here I want to add lights in the vertical direction, so we'll click on the up arrow to add lights. I've added 5 divided lights and I'll click OK. Then I'll select that window and I'll drag it until it bumps and stops right up against the side of the door. And then, with that window selected, I want to make a copy exactly the same thing over on the opposite side of the door. So I'm going to go to my Copy Paste tool in my toolbar at the bottom. Once I've clicked on my Copy Paste tool, I'm getting sub-tools. Here I'll click on the Reflect About Object tool and then hover over the center of the door until I get that center line indicator. When I click, it'll copy the window to the exact opposite side of the door. Now we'll take a look at this with an elevation view. Here in your toolbar at the top, you have 2 different 3D view tools. You have your camera tools, which we've used, and you have your orthographic view tools. I'll select the orthographic view tools, and the first one, the cross-section elevation, is active. This one works the same way a camera does. I'll click where I want to stand with the camera, and then drag towards the object that I want to see in my camera view. And as you can see here, I now have a door with 2 side lights. However, I can see that the casing is too wide between these 2 objects. Chief will adjust this for me automatically. If I select one of the windows here in the elevation view, hold down my Shift key, select the door, and then select the other window, and I want to mold them together or glue them together as one object. I can use the Make Mold Unit tool in my Edit toolbar at the bottom. Now these objects will move together as one object. I'll go ahead and close this view, and I'll close the camera view that I created by clicking on the X on the tab with my camera view. Now we'll place some windows. I'll fill the window with the building, and then click on the Window Tools parent tool, which will activate the first window tool. And here I'll place one window in this living room area, and place another one right next to it, and then place another one on the opposite side. Now with all of these windows bumped right up together, I want to center these on the living room. So I'll select all 3 of them. Use my Center Object tool again, hover over the living room until the living room itself is highlighted, and I get that vertical center line, and click. I'll go ahead and place a few more windows, a couple here in the living room, one here in the bedroom, and then we'll place a sliding glass door in the kitchen. We'll go to the Door Tools parent tool and use the sliding door. I'll go ahead and place this door right here. Click and drag it down just a little bit. And I'm going to move this opening out of the way, and I want to place another sliding door using the exact same tool that I used for this one. Place it on an interior wall, and then we'll take a camera view of this. And you'll notice here that even though I've used the same tool for both, the sliding door, when I placed it on an exterior wall, it's placed the sliding glass door. When I placed it on the interior wall, it placed a sliding panel door. Again, these are defaults that you set up. If I go to my defaults tool, go to the door defaults, you'll notice that I have interior sliding door and exterior sliding door. Chief is smart enough to know if it's placing a door on an interior wall or an exterior wall. I'll go ahead and delete this door and again center my opening on the room. Then we'll place the garage door. I want my garage door to be a bit wider, so I'll select the garage door, and again you can either open the specification dialog by clicking on the Open Object tool, or you can simply double-click on the object to open the exterior door specification. Here I'm going to make this wider. I want this to be 16 feet wide. Another thing I want to do is the wall between my house and the garage needs to be a different wall type. It needs to be a firewall. So I'll select the wall, use the Open Object tool, go to Wall Types, and click on the drop-down. Chief has provided us a lot of different wall types to use. I'll go ahead and use the Fire 6. You have Fire 4 and Fire 6. The 4 indicates 2x4 framing, the 6 indicates 2x6 framing, and I'll go ahead and click OK. But then you'll notice that when I change the wall type and the wall width, it's become misaligned here at the corner. So I'll simply select the Move Edit handle, move it very slowly over to the right and down into the intersection of these walls, and as soon as I see that red X indicator, that means my walls are aligned. I'll go ahead and fill the window with the building. Now, once you've placed your doors and windows, you can move them by using those temporary dimensions. If I select this window, you'll notice that I have temporary dimensions that show up, dimensioning from each of the walls and the adjacent windows. If I click towards the inside edge of the window, I'll get dimensions to the inside of the wall. If I click towards the outside of the window, I'll get dimensions towards the outside of the wall. Here I'll click on the inside edge of the window and use this dimension to move it 18 inches from the wall. Then I'll select this window and do the same thing. You can also edit the window by selecting the window and changing the size by using the Side Edit handles, or move the window by using the Move Edit handle. You can also edit the window's label by clicking on the small Move Edit handle on top of the label, or using the triangle to rotate the label. I'll go ahead and click Undo and move my window back to where it was. And then fill the window. And again, with your windows, the label is on its own layer. If you don't want the layer displayed that shows the label, you can go back to your Layer Display options, select one of the layers in the list, and type W for Window. Here you can see where you have your window layer and your Windows Labels layer. If you uncheck this box and click OK, the window labels are no longer displayed. Now let's explore a little bit more about the dimension tools. I'll zoom in closer to this wall and we'll go to our Manual Dimension Tools. When you click on the Dimension Tools parent tool, the first tool in the Child Tool palette is activated. This is your Manual Dimension tool. If I click and drag a line near this wall, you can see that as I drag, Chief will place a dimension line, and it'll locate each object with an extension line. The first corner is located, and then as soon as I pass the side of the window, Chief will place another extension line. If I go past the next side of the window, Chief will place another extension line. And as I move down, it'll find each object in turn and place extensions. Once you've created a dimension line, you can select it and move it. If you want to edit the extension lines, click on the dimension line to get the diamond-shaped edit handles. To remove an extension line, simply click on that diamond-shaped edit handle and drag it away from anything on your screen. That will remove the one extension line. You can change the placement of an extension line by selecting the diamond edit handle and moving it. You can also add an extension line. If you click on the dimension line itself, you'll see you have a dangling diamond edit handle. This will provide another extension. I'll simply drag it to the side of the window to place another extension line. We'll go ahead and delete this dimension line and take a look at a couple of other dimension tools. The second tool down is your end-to-end dimension tool. If I click and drag a dimension line along this wall, it'll locate the first object and place extension lines between the end of the wall and the window. But as I pass that point and go to the other side of the window, it'll drop that first extension line and place another one on this side. As I go past the window to the next, it'll drop that one. So this dimension tool will place one dimension line between this end and this end. And you'll notice here, if I select a dimension tool and click and drag a line farther away from the wall, it's not locating anything to place an extension line to. That's because it has a set reach distance that you set up in your defaults. It's set up to find anything within 24 inches. The next tool is your angle dimension tool. This one will dimension angles between walls. If I click and drag an arc between these two walls, it'll place that angular dimension. Then you have your interior dimension tool, which we've used to dimension the insides of our rooms. This will place one dimension line from the inside of this wall to the inside of this wall. This next one is the point-to-point dimension tool. This tool will create a dimension line and snap to the objects where you drag your line. However, this dimension is not associated with the objects it's dimensioning to. If I use that end-to-end dimension and place another dimension here, you'll notice that these two dimensions are now identical. If I select this wall, I can click on this dimension to move that wall. I'll move this now to 18 feet even. It doesn't look like very much has changed, but you'll notice that this dimension did not change. That's because it's not associated with the wall. If I select the wall and try to select this dimension, it's not allowing me to use that to move the wall. The point-to-point dimension is creating its own dimension points. If I click and drag here away from any object in the plan, you can see the plus marks at each end. These are the dimension points that are affecting this dimension. So you need to be very careful about using the point-to-point dimension tool in your plan and be aware that it's not associated with the objects that you're dimensioning to. I'll go ahead and move this wall back to where it was and then delete my dimensions. The last two dimension tools are the baseline dimensions and the running dimensions. The baseline dimension tool will locate the first and second objects and place a dimension line between them, and then locate the next object and place another dimension line from the start point, and then the next object. Each one of these dimensions is relative to the start point. The running dimension is similar. If I start here at this corner and click and drag a dimension line, it'll locate the first object and place an extension. Then it'll locate the second object and place another extension. However, on this one dimension line, the first extension line is 2 feet from the start point indicated by the circle. The second extension line is 4'8" from the start point, that circle. And again, the next point is 12'4" from the start point. Now, let's go ahead and fill the window with the building, and we'll move on to adding additional floors.